maybe an on the nose question, but
Yeah.
it's one I've been wanting to ask you personally in our friendship.
Okay.
But it's also very, very, very timely because of some events that have happened on October 7th, 2023.
Yeah.
I've been following the news a lot, and boy, I mean, this is the conflict that makes me feel like I want to be cynical about this, but I know I should fight it because I don't want to be so cynical. But like, man, that's fucked up. As an Israeli,
Yeah.
I will ask you, how do you think that this conflict between Israelis and Palestinians could possibly come to a peaceful solution?
So this is, of course, a difficult question.
Yeah, sure.
Naturally. I mean, I think the main problem is that most people don't know how to categorize this conflict. Okay?
Okay.
Some people call it a religious conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Some people call it a national conflict. I reject both theses.
Okay.
I think it's a conflict for resources.
Mm-hmm.
In the land of Israel / Palestine / whatever, you can call it however you want. You can call this like piece of land. Yeah. But in this piece of land, there's more or less, right? Like a 50-50 divide between Jewish people and Palestinian people. You have like around these today, as of this recording, like 7.5 million Jews and 7.5 million Palestinians. Mm-hmm. Of course, you have other groups that have other identifications, and not all Jews see themselves as Israelis or as Zionists, and not all Arabs see themselves as Palestinians, and not all Arabs are Muslim. But generally speaking, this is more or less 50-50 division. But the way resources are divided in this land is not equal between Jews and Palestinians. And I think once this will become like the main point of the discourse of like thinking, how can we share these resources, not even equally, like in a fair way. It doesn't have to be equal. It has to be fair. Because, for example, in the West Bank, you basically like, and this is not only my personal opinion, right? Amnesty International, like already a year ago, they defined the situation in the West Bank as pure apartheid, right? Because you have around between 2.5 and 3 million Palestinians living with no civilian rights, while you have like 500,000 settlers living with full civilian rights from the state of Israel, right? They can vote in the election, they get the infrastructure, they get electricity, they get everything they need. So, and there are like these separate law systems, right? If like a Palestinian in the West Bank breaks the law, they need to stand trial like in a military court, Israeli military court, and not an actual court with like legal representation and everything. So I think once the discourse becomes like, how do we make the resources we have in this land, if we think of how to divide them fairly between the groups of people, they don't have to live in peace even. It's just about like dividing these resources in a fair way. Once this will be the main goal of both leaderships, both the Palestinian leadership and the Israeli leadership, I think we might have a way to like actually establishing something resembling peace in this region.
Okay.
Up until then, like this will be constant war because people are just like miscategorizing this entire conflict, in my point of view.
I mean, is it like the point that like, if the Palestinian people in Gaza, West Bank, have resources for themselves, then they can then form a solid foundation for a state, which can then can force its own independence or fight a bit in a meaningful political way for
Yeah,
rights
I
of
mean,
it.
not necessarily. This is exactly the problem, right? Because the first two intifadas, and the third intifada probably coming this year. At least the first two intifadas, they came actually in a time of like prosperity for the Palestinian people.
Okay.
They actually had time to think about like their political ambitions and their national ambitions, and this is what brought on the intifadas. So I'm not sure that financial prosperity definitely leads to peace, because and that's what I'm saying. It's not really about the financial prosperity. It's about like the division of resources, because if the Palestinians feel that they have enough resources to develop what they envision as a state. And I'm not a Palestinian. I don't speak Arabic good enough to actually say what the Palestinians, to speak on behalf of the Palestinians and what they envision as a state. But I do believe that once you have the resources to actually develop something, then we can have like a fair discourse between the two groups. Up until then, like this is not balanced in any way. Like you can say, like, of course, like historical reasons, like also like Russia and the United States are not balanced. Like, should we balance Russia and the United States? And I would say no, but like this is a different situation because you have two groups that are not going anywhere. Right, like they're now like right wing, like extreme right wing. Not even the extreme right, even the Israeli center. They're proposing like deportation of Palestinians from Gaza, and like Palestinians don't want to go away from Palestine. They actually want to live there.
Understandably so.
Yeah, like of course not all of them. Like not all of the Jews want to live in Israel. Actually, most of the Jews don't live in Israel. But like the Palestinians that do live in Palestine, most of them actually want to stay there, and like thinking of deporting them and like not allowing them to live in their state. This would only cause more violence and more animosity. So I would say like the state of mind should be, okay, we're both here, no one's going anywhere. Let's think of how we can divide these resources in a way that we can live side by side. Maybe sometimes there'll be violence, but like at least we'll have like some kind of like an equal footing of like of a basis that we can like base our societies on and strive for some kind of like a future. Because currently both leaderships, they don't propose any vision for the future. All they propose is more war, more violence, and if that's the only thing you propose and that's the only thing you promise, that's what will happen. Like no one in Israel has a vision for peace, and no one in Palestine has a true vision for peace. So I think this vision could stem from like a fair distribution of resources.
Like for example, if I was reading a bit recently about the oil mining or oil collection off the coast of Gaza.
Yes.
Like for example, if this was firmly under the control of some governmental organization, some civic organization of the Palestinians.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that we both don't trust the state, right? Palestinians don't trust the Palestinian Authority, and most Israelis don't trust the Israeli state and government. This is what makes the situation so complex. Like, if there will be an option to actually set like actual institutions that are not governmental but also don't cause chaos, this would be amazing. But I'm not sure if it's like, I'm not sure if we're there yet.
But like the logic is that like if the Palestinian people collectively had some resource, not just money, not prosperity necessarily, but natural resource, then like the Israelis or the government would be more inclined to, like they would have something that is like a bargaining chip on the table.
Yeah, and also on the other hand, think about it, like they'll have something to lose.
Okay.
Like an attack like the October 7th attack would never happen if the Palestinians would have something to lose.
Right.
Like the only reason they this brutal attack happened is because they really had nothing to lose anymore. Like Israel has been choking them for like the past 15 years. So like at this point, like what else could have they done? Like I don't justify any of the actions like done by the terrorists of the October 7th attack, but like thinking of that from their point of view, like what else could they have done? Like they don't have anything to lose anymore.
That is a dangerous situation, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you so often hear this example in English, like an animal cornered will become desperate.
Yeah.
Okay, it's so uncool to say animal in this context, but in a way that when a group of people become cornered, when they have no other options, then yeah, desperation.
Yeah, of course, they like default to like pure instinct.
I remember seeing on the news some interview with some young guy in Gaza during some protests, one of many, and he said something like very simply, okay, he doesn't support Hamas, but like at least they're doing something. In his eyes, at least they were taking an action. And maybe for some people that's
but that's the problem.
Enough.
But that's the problem. This is like the exact political situation in Israel, right? Because like like a lot of people don't like the current government, but they're like, that's the best we have. Like people don't like most people in Israel. They don't want to hear about like a new election or like changing the government right now. Even though this, in my opinion, this would be the best thing Israel could do, like replace this terrible government. But people are so like, this goes back to what we talked about before. People are so uncreative these days. They're thinking so much in like schemas and like boxes and like maybe also the current technological situation is contributing to this, right? But like people are being so uncreative these days. They can't think outside of their own realities. And this is a dangerous situation because this keeps us in this like perpetual war in the Middle East or like also in other places, right? Like
Ukraine,
Africa, like like people they don't think of like creative solutions, and the result is just like perpetual suffering.
Yeah, I mean the mention of the media situation always gets me going.
Yeah,
I mean it's hard, of course, to say okay, it's because of this one thing.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
I don't know. I think of this idea of bubbles that, for example, the United States is a cultural bubble. An apartheid state creates also bubbles where, the other side is across a wall or a fence. It's separated. And when you are then mainly interacting through the world through social media or through screens and pictures, then I don't know, more and more I have the feeling that like we live in an increasingly bubbled world.
Yeah.
And, the bubbles may be windows onto this virtual utopia, but it's also a prison that, it's hard to get out of, or it forces us into these thought patterns that we don't realize.
Yeah. I mean, I'm adopting the Steve Bannon approach.
That, like, Steve Bannon approach.
Yeah, basically we have some elites. Like you can define the elites however you'd like, right? Like, but like when I say elites, you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
You have some elites that are controlling all the resources. This is again like a resource question, right? Like we have some elites that are controlling most of the resources, and what we should do is basically like not allow these elites to control so many resources anymore. Once we do that, like, I don't think that like everything will get better, but like we'll have a better chance of things getting better moving forward.
I always, when people say things like this, I think of the game of life. You know, this like algorithm thing where like the individual square can like destroy a square next to it or something like this. But I remember watching it in some courses, the Kug, that in our electronic music courses, where you see like actually structures emerge and they kind of like suck up all of like the other neighboring squares. I feel like that's just what happens now in society. That there are these groups that are sucking up all of these resources, and it's creating this imbalance.
But it's our choice, right? It's like your choice to go into Facebook. It's your choice to buy stuff out of Amazon. It's your choice to search things on the internet through Google. There are so many other search engines these days. Like, it's our choice, and we can make better choices.